Hey guys, I'm Chef D-Max. Welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're going to do ghee. What is ghee? It's so simple, and you're going to use it in cooking a lot at home to give you like a beautiful buttery taste with stuff and not have to worry about burning the butter. I'll explain all about it. Stick with me. Click subscribe if you're not doing that. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video and ring that bell, and I'll tell you what's coming up soon. So see you back. Hey guys, okay, let's get back to making this ghee. So first what I do is I get a decent butter. I like this Cabot butter from Vermont. It's really nice, but I'll use a different mix. So I've got, I want to make a decent amount. You know, when you make ghee, you're making kind of this cooked butter where the milk solids are kind of browning, slightly browning. They're not burning. You don't want to have this burnt look to it or flavor to it. So, but it takes time. It's going to take us 15 to 20 minutes to cook this. So, you want to do a good batch of it, and then you'll have it, and it keeps for a long time too. So, make a good batch, put it in a mason jar, put it in the fridge, and then you'll have it. So, you can see that difference in this is just kind of a regular generic butter, even though it is an organic butter. And then you can look at this Cabot butter. Look at the color difference in that, right? Really, and that I think comes, from what they're eating. There's cows in Vermont. They're eating really, they're getting good grass-fed stuff, and it makes a difference in the color, and probably in the fat too, in it, and the milk that's in there. So use a good butter for that. I mean, you don't need to use the most expensive butter, but you still want something decent. So I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to start melting this butter down, and I'll explain a little bit of stuff about this. So now what I would not do, and I'm doing that because I've got my cast iron pan out here, because my clear white pan I used for an event and I didn't get it back yet. So I would normally cook this in a pan that's clear. You know what works great is like those enameled cast irons, like the Le Cruzettes or the different ones that are out on the market that have kind of a white or creamy coat on them, because then you can see the level of brown your butter's getting. I mean, I've done this enough times where I'm going to be able to see it, but working in a black pan when you're trying to look to see if something's browned is not the thing to do. So don't follow my direction on that. Sometimes, most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, follow my direction, but not on this. So I'm going to do is you're going to let this butter melt. And when it melts down here, it's going to start to simmer and almost boil. What's happening in there? In this butter, there is oil fat, there's milk fat, there's cream, there's water in there, right? So what's going to happen is those are going to all separate. So you would never want to put a lid on this, because if you put a lid on this, that water can't separate. Then you'd find that water in your butter later, and you would have to strain it out. So what we want to do is leave this uncovered, let the water escape as it's boiling, right? And when it's boiling, we're going to watch those milk solids. Those milk solids are going to come to the top, and they're going to kind of scatter around up there as it's boiling, and eventually they're going to drop down to the bottom. They're going to stick on the bottom, and they're going to start to brown. And when they do that, we want to slow it down a little bit. We want to really watch it, because at that point is when that toasting milk solid will kind of flavor this fat. And the fat that you're left over with is that butter fat, but that's clean of any milk or water that's going to burn. And you really have this clarified oil. Milk. It's a dairy oil at that point. So the good part about that is you can cook with it and get butter flavor from that clarified ghee, like you would sautéing with a grapeseed oil or a high heat oil, like sunflower seed oil is one of these that you can sauté a piece of fish. And I think in Indian cooking, a lot of times they use that because what they're doing is getting that ghee really hot, and they love to toast spices in that first. And we'll be doing that. I've got some episodes coming up with a chef friend of mine, worked for me for many years, and she's going to be doing some curries with me. So you guys got to stay tuned and stick with me and check those out, because they're going to be really cool chutneys and things like that. But I know a lot of those recipes, you're going to start with this ghee and get it really hot. So that's the key. If you just put butter separates, and you got to go through that whole stage when you're cooking something. So now you can see this is melting down, right? And what we're going to do is I'm going to let this melt down, and when this comes back to a boil, probably it's going to take about a couple minutes. We're going to take a look at it then. So I'll see you back in a second. Okay, we're back here. It's been about 4 minutes later, and I've got my ghee is just simmering away. You can see it boiling here, right? And what do you see on the top? You see a foam. That's that milk. Those are milk solids. They've kind of floated to the top, and they're gonna cook here for a little bit until some of the water in those have evaporated, and they're gonna drop down to the bottom, and then that's when we're gonna get that toasting sensation. So right now I'm just stirring it around a little bit, but to help the water evaporate. But you don't really need to do that. Now, one of the things you do want to do is buy unsalted butter. So buy sweet butter. Sometimes it'll say sweet butter, which means it doesn't have salt in it, and sometimes it'll say unsalted. So the reason that we do that is because when you clarify this and you're cooking it, you don't want to have excess salt. So if you clarify it with salted butter, sometimes it could get too salty. So we don't want to do that. Now, what I want to do is I want to turn it down just a little bit, because it's kind of rapidly boiling right now, and I do want it to boil, but I want to be in control of it. So I'm going to do that and let it boil at a little bit lower pace. So I just kind of clicked it down a little bit to more of a medium, maybe even a little lower. I'm going to go little by little till it's kind of right where I want it to be. And that's what we're looking for. So I just kind of keep stirring it. Now you're seeing like a really golden hue to the oil, which is really what I want. I want this great golden color. And eventually what happens is this clarifies. We call it clarifying. And it works with a lot of stuff. If you've never made duck fat, and duck fat's great to cook with. It's great to cook duck and chicken legs with. It's just great as a flavoring for certain meats and things when we're cooking. And one of the pieces of that is taking all the fat from that duck, putting in a pot with a little water and simmering it. We use that water to kind of be a medium to cook that and extract the fat from the duck's skin and all of that. So what happens after a while, the duck fat renders off of the skin. The skin sits in there and gets crispy, almost like a little chicharrone, and then the water escapes. And what you're left with at the end is it clarifies and becomes perfectly clear. It looks like you're looking at extra virgin olive oil with bits of skin in there that are super crispy because they've been frying in that oil. And then you skim that off and you keep that duck fat. You can keep it in the freezer forever. But it's the same with this. You've got the water, you've got the milk solids in there, and you're cooking those off. Now, what people say, what's the difference between ghee and clarified butter? It's really clarified butter. You really don't try to toast those solids at all. You're just separating them so you have the oil, but the oil has not been toasted with that kind of nuttiness that the milk solids create when they toast on the bottom and they flavor the oil. So if you want to make clarified butter, you melt the butter, you cook it for a little bit till it separates like this, and it's already separated like that, and you pour that in a glass jar. On the top you'll see some foamy stuff and you skip that milk off. On the bottom you'll see maybe some liquid water or milky water that hasn't toasted or cooked off, and then you just basically scoop from the top, so you just get the clear butter, and then discard the bottom water away. So that's the difference. So not a huge difference. There is a difference in flavor, but you're still using that oil in the center. Okay, so I'm going to stir this a little bit. You can see now a lot of my milk solids have dropped down to the bottom now, right? You don't see them on the top. You just see a little bit of foam on the top, but that's fine. And then the milk solids that drop to the bottom, they're going to get super toasty. So let's cook this a little longer, and I'll show it to you I'll show it to you when it's kind of almost done. All right, so see you back in a second. Okay, guys, it's getting really foamy now, and what we want to do is I'm going to turn it off actually, because at this point I've gotten a little bit of toastiness on the bottom, and you can see it. You can see it almost in the color of the foam. The color of the foam is very, it's very like lightly, it's almost like this light yellow. And with the milk solids on the bottom, we don't want to overcook those because we want goldenness, but not too nutty brown, right? Because there are brown butters, and you could, it depends with you. Some people really love the, you know, kind of a heavy brown butter. So that's really up to you, how you like that. If you really like a heavy brown butter, you can let it go a little bit darker and use it like that. But otherwise, I shut it off like this and let it just cool in the pan, and let this slowly kind of separate, and we're going to have that beautiful oil as this drops down to the bottom. And it's going to be beautiful color too. We've got great color here, and that's what I'm looking for. So when this is kind of settled a little bit, as it's cooled here, we're going to let it cool, and then I'm going to go ahead and strain it. So the first thing I do is I'm going to strain it into, with a funnel, into another container that I can easily pour. And then I've got my jar marked ghee, and I'm going to be able to put that in the fridge, and I'll have ghee whenever I want it. So you can see, like, as it's cooled a little, what happened? All that foam kind of disappeared, right? Now, when you look at this, you're going to see like you see that beautiful yellow oil? And that's what you're looking for. Now, on the bottom, you don't see too brown of bits, and that's what you don't want. You don't want heavy brown bits because it's too much. Okay, so we're going to let this cool slightly, and then we're going to separate it by pouring it in here. Once I pour it in there, I'll let it sit for a second and settle. And when it sits and settles, as I strain it into this jar, I'll be able to pour just the clear oil, and no bits or anything will get trapped in there. So we'll let this rest for a second, and we'll be right back. We're back, and here I've got my butter has really melted down. The solids have all stuck to the bottom there and toasted just ever so lightly. We have a little bit of excess foam here that I can pull off towards the end after I do my pouring here. What I want to do is strain it in two sections, I should say. So I'm going to take it first, and I'm going to strain it by pouring it into this jar with a funnel like this. Let me see how much room I have. It's actually getting to the top here. We can do it in 2 stages, it's fine. No big deal. So what you see by doing it in 2 stages is that this has all those bits in there and some of the foam. Now, here I have some foam, and I'm going to just take a spoon, and I'm going to need a jar. I'm going to need something to pull this out of. I'm going to, now look, if you can see this really good, this foam, as I pull this out, it becomes just this little amount of foam on the top. See that? It's like pulling whipped cream out of a coffee. It's crazy. It's so simple. And then we don't lose a lot of product either. You can see that I just have the foam here, and haven't lost that at all. It's so good though. That foam itself is like beautiful. So then here, I'm going to pour this into my jar. Let me pull it up here so you guys can see it better. and I'm going to turn it around this way. So here, what I'm going to do when I pour this is I'm pouring it. I'm also looking in the jar to make sure that there's no solids in there that are going to come through that are tiny and are going to get through this sieve, but they're not. Okay, that's good. So that's where we are with that. Now, let me do this. Let me pour any bit of kind of dusty oil in there. So now, second time around, we're going to do this. We're going to put it here. Now, you can see when I'm pouring what happens. The fat comes off, right? And then we're going to stop right at that, right at the solids. And these are all my solids. Look how much solid is in there. And that solid, it's actually super flavorful. It's actually nice to toss that in with breadcrumbs and serve that on top of some pasta. Really nice. So with this, now I can take this out, right? And I'm going to skim, just like we did last time, skim any excess foam. And again, it's only a tiny bit, like this, out, right? And then what we end up with is beautiful clarified butter that we're going to pour in here, or ghee. I shouldn't say clarified butter because it's not. At this point, it is more of a toasted product. And this shows you kind of too what you get. I was one stick shy of, see, so that's perfectly clear clarified butter. Look at that. Or ghee. I keep saying clarified butter because that's what I've called it my whole life, clarified butter, right? Or brown butter. Now, ghee is just kind of a version in between those. Clarified butter has no nuttiness to it because you didn't toast the milk solids. Brown butter, you toasted the milk solids till it's really dark brown. And ghee is kind of somewhere right in the middle of that, okay? But it's basically by separating this fat out of your butter. Removing the milk, removing the water that's in there, so this can last for a long time. And it has a high burning point too, so you can use it in hot heat cooking, sauteing, and stuff like that. So we're gonna let that cool down completely. I'll put it in my fridge and we'll be good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and come back soon and see what else I have going on. I'll see you back in the kitchen sometime, right? Bye guys, I'm Chef Dean Max.